In this lesson, we're going to go back and do a little bit of algebra. So as you know, we are doing algebra in number sense all throughout the course. So this lesson moves on from solving equations with two variables. So we're going to talk about the distributive property. So the distributive property is something that we use when we have brackets. So when we have a number or a term in front of a bracket, it means that that number or term has to be distributed throughout the bracket, meaning we have to multiply everything in the bracket by the number or term that appears in front of it. So for example, if I have A times B plus C, order of operations, remember BEDMAS, means I have to multiply before I can add. So I'm going to multiply A times the first term and then A times the second term. So I am distributing A throughout the bracket. So it'd be A times B, which is AB, and then plus A times C, which is AC. So for example, if I had 2 times x plus 1, I'm going to distribute the 2 throughout the bracket. So it's going to be 2 times x is 2x, and then we have a plus sign, and then we have 2 times 1 is 2. So both terms in the bracket get multiplied by 2. In the second example, we are distributing the 5 throughout the bracket. So it'll be 5 times 2x, which is 10x, plus, so whatever sign appears next, we write that down, and then we have 5 times 3, which is 15. In the next example, we are distributing negative 3 throughout the bracket, so it'll be negative 3 times x, which is negative 3x. Now here, be careful of signs. We have a negative 3, subtract 4, which is like negative 3 times negative 4. So with signs, we have a negative times a negative results in a positive, and 3 times 4 is 12. So if you're going to make an error, it's generally with the sign value. So just remember, a negative times a negative is a positive. If there is no number in front, but we have this negative sign, remember that that means negative 1, so it's still a coefficient. So we're multiplying negative 1 times 3x, which is negative 3x, and then we have negative 1 times negative 5, which is positive 5. So just be careful of signs. Here's a couple more examples. So here we have variables and numbers, so just remember with our exponents, we're multiplying negative 3n times 7n. So when we multiply the numbers. So negative 3 times 7 is negative 21. And then n times an n means I have 2 n's, or n squared. I always separate these into signs, numbers, and variables. So I always do the sign first. So I have a negative times a positive will be a negative. I have 3 times 1 is 3. And then I have 1n. In the next example, we have a negative 10, and then we have a times a, so we have 2 a's, or a squared. Then we have a negative times a negative is a positive. We have 10 times 5 is 50, and then we have 1a. In this one, you'll notice that the 14x is after the bracket. That's okay. Remember that 2 times 3 is the same as 3 times 2. So it doesn't matter which way we multiply. So if you're not comfortable having it at the end, then just move it to the beginning. So 14x times x plus 1 is the same as x plus 1 times 14x. So if you like it that way, just put it at the front. So we've got 14x times x is x squared. And then we have 14x times 1, which is 14x. So sometimes this direction will say expand and simplify. So expand means to multiply using the distributive property. Simplify means to collect any like terms. So sometimes when we expand, we will be able to simplify further by collecting terms that are like. Just remember that you need to follow BEDMAS when there's more than one operation. So for example, in this first question, I'm going to expand this bracket. So 4 times 2x is 8x. And then I have 4 times negative 3y is negative 12y. Once that bracket closed, I'm finished with that bracket. Then we move on. So then we have plus, And then the 5 belongs to this bracket. Okay, so once we have a closing of a bracket, we're done with that. We move on to the next terms or the next brackets. So the 5 belongs to the 3x minus 8y. So it'll be 5 times 3 is 15. X, positive times a negative is a negative. 5 times 8 is 40, and we have a y. Then we look for like terms. So we look for terms that have exactly the same variables. So I noticed that 8x and 15x are like terms because they both have 1x. So remember, when we add like terms, we only add the coefficients, not the variables. So 8 plus 15 is 23, and we have x's. So x does not change. Remember, when we add and subtract like terms, the variables do not change. Then I noticed that 12y and 40y are like terms. They're both y's. So we have a negative 12 minus 40. Both the signs are negative, so we add the numbers and keep the sign. So negative 52, and those are y's. Again, the y does not change, it just stays at y. It doesn't become y squared. We're not multiplying, we are adding and subtracting. So the variables stay the same. So I'll just put a note here: when adding or subtracting like terms, we're going to add the coefficients, and variables do not change. Okay, in this one we've got 3x times 4x, so 3 times 4 is 12, x times x is x squared. We have 3x times 5y. 3 times 5 is 15. And then we have an x and a y, so we'll just write xy. And then we have 3x times 3. 3 times 3 is 9, and then we just have an x. So then the bracket is closed. We're done with that bracket. We go on to the next bracket. So negative 2 times 8x is negative 16. Oh, it's an x squared. Then we have negative 2 times 3x. So a negative times a positive is a negative. 2 times 3 is 6, and we have 1x. And then we have negative 2 times negative 5. So we have a negative times a negative is a positive. 2 times 5 is 10. And then we're looking for like terms. So 12x squared and minus 16x squared are like. The x's are both squared, so they are the same. So 12 minus 16 is negative 4, and those x squares stay the same. There are no other xy's, so we've just got 15xy. 9x and 6x go together. They are like terms, so positive 9 and negative 6 is positive 3. And again, the x stays the same, and then this 10 is by itself, so that stays at the end. Okay, in this last example, we have negative 4 times 2x is negative 8x. We have a negative times a negative is a positive. 4 times 3 is 15, and we have a y. Brackets close, so we move on. Remember, it's a minus or a minus 1. So we have minus 1 times 5x. And then we have minus 1 times positive 7y. And a negative times a positive is a negative. And then we'll look for like terms. 8x and 5x are like. So we add the coefficients. Negative 8 and negative 5 is negative 13, and those are x's. And then 15y and 7y are like. So plus 15 minus 7 is plus 8, and we have y's. Okay, here we are now solving. So solving, remember, solve means to find the value of x that makes the statement true. So find the value of the variable, whatever the variable may be. It might not always be an x. So first thing we want to do when we're solving is we want to expand brackets. And the reason we're doing that is because we want to follow BEDMAS. So BEDMAS says brackets, exponents, multiplication. So we're going to do our brackets first. So 2 times x and plus 2 times 1. Once we've expanded brackets, we want to isolate the variable, so we want to get rid of this plus 2. So in order to get rid of the plus 2, I'm going to do the opposite. So I'm going to subtract 2, and I do the same on the other side. So plus 2 and minus 2 is 0, so that is gone. And then we have 8 minus 2 is 6. And then we want to group. So we have two x's, so we want to divide it into two groups. So that means each group would have 3. So x equals 3. And then we want to check our answer. So I can check my answer using a left side, right side check. Remember, we're going to write the original question. And then we're going to sub in the value that we think x is. We think x is 3. So I'm going to put that in for x. 3 plus 1 is 4. 2 times 4 is 8. Left side equals right side, so my answer is correct. All right, moving on to the next question. We're going to expand brackets. So 2 times 3 is 6x. 2 times negative 4. The 6 is not in the brackets, it's just by itself. So sometimes after I expand brackets, I could then collect like terms. So that's what I check for next. So I want to simplify before I start to solve. So negative 8 plus 6 could be added together. So negative 8 plus 6 is negative 2. So I'm going to do that first before I start isolating for the variable. Now I want to get rid of the minus 2 because I want the 6x by itself. So I'll do the opposite. So the opposite of minus 2 is plus 2, and I'll do the same on the other side. So 10 plus 2 is 12, and then we're going to group into two groups of 6. So each group would have 2. And I'll do a left side, right side check. Let's see if I have room here. So I'm going to remember we always write the original question. Then we're going to sub in our answer. So we think x is 2. So we'll put that in there. So the bracket is 3 times 2 is 6. 6 minus 4 is 2. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 6 is 10. Left side equals right side. Okay, in the next example, we have 2 times 4 is 8, and we have 2 times negative 3m is negative 6m. So I've got only m's on the left, so I want to get rid of this 8. So I'm going to do the opposite. So 8 minus 8 is 0. I'll do the same on the other side. So that leaves me with negative 6m, and 13 minus 8 is 5. And then I'm going to group it. So I want 1m. So I need to not only divide by 6, but also by the negative, because a negative times a negative, or a negative divided by a negative is a positive. So whatever that coefficient is, that's what I want to divide by. So if the coefficient is negative 6, I want to divide by negative 6. And I'll do the same on the other side. So negative 6 divided by negative 6 is 1m. And then sometimes your answer will be a fraction. That's okay. I'm not going to check this one. But it can be a fraction. I don't have much room to check it, so we'll do that in class. But for now, I'll just leave it as negative 5 over 6. And we'll leave it as a fraction. We don't want to change it to a decimal. We want to leave it as an exact answer. So some of your answers will be fractions. Okay, and the last one here, negative 3 times 2. I have a negative times a negative is a positive 3a. I can collect like terms. Plus 3a minus a is plus 2a. Then I want to isolate for 2a, so let's get rid of the minus 6 by doing the opposite, and then we'll do the same on the other side. So 1 plus 6 is 7. And then I want to put it into two groups, so divide by 2. So whatever that coefficient is, that's what I'm dividing by. And so a would equal 7 over 2. Sometimes we might have variables on both sides. So again, we're going to expand brackets. 2 times 13 is 26. And then I'll expand brackets on the right side. 3 times 5 is 15. 3 times negative 1x is negative 3x. Now we want to get the variables on the same side. I'm going to choose to put them on the left. You could put them on either side. I like to keep my coefficient positive, so I'm going to do the opposite with this negative 3x. I'm going to add 3x, and I'll do the same on this side. So 2x plus 3x is 5x. And then minus 3x plus 3x is 0, so that gets rid of that. Then we're going to move this 26, so we'll do the opposite. Do the same on the other side. So 26 minus 26 is 0. 15 minus 26 is negative 11. And then finally we will group. The coefficient is 5, so we will divide by 5. And so x equals negative 11 over 5. Okay, so here is just a bit of a summary on the steps. You want to use your distributive property to get rid of brackets first. You want to, so we're going to multiply brackets. We're going to combine like terms if possible. Then we want to get the variables on the same side. So we're going to add and subtract variables to get the variables on the same side. Then we want to multiply to eliminate division or divide to eliminate multiplication. Then we're going to find our answer. Then we're going to check our answer.